Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Psychology from My Kitchen. I'm Mrs. Sarah Ryan, still racking shingles all over my face, so my camera's turned off. But today we are continuing in Unit 11 of AP Psychology talking about personality. So I know we've had a couple of interesting talks here about Mr. Sigmund Freud and his theory of psychoanalysis. And one such other aspect that is a little bit more Freudian, kind of a little bit more historical in terms of personality, are what's known as the defense mechanisms. Now, where Freud and psychoanalysis and the idea that your personality stems from unconscious drives and motives and going through these psychosexual stages, like we don't really believe in those so much anymore. But defense mechanisms, we do. That we still recognize that defense mechanisms are going to occur and that they are still part of our personality and things that we do. So a defense mechanism is something that occurs when we are in the wrong. Okay, we've done something wrong. We have screwed up. Okay, and because we've screwed up, we are anxious about that. So we made a mistake, we have a problem, it's making us upset, it's making us anxious, and these are different ways that I might go about dealing with that anxiety, that I am reducing my anxiety by doing one of these different types of behaviors. So all defense mechanisms are based off of the idea of repression. And to repress means to put down. And so repression is the idea that when you have these thoughts that are bad or like a an incident that happened to you that makes you upset, that your way of dealing with it is by banishing these provoking thoughts. You don't think about it anymore. That it's where you like push them into the deep recesses of your mind, and that they might come out again in like your dreams or something like that. But you had this really terrible thing happen to you, and your way of dealing with it is by not dealing with it. You don't think about it anymore. You pretend that it doesn't exist. You have repressed the memory, if you will. Now, another type of defense mechanism is when you are upset or something bad has happened to you, you are going to regress. And to regress means to go back. And here, your regression is to go back to what Freud would say a previous psychosexual stage. But really, what's happened is that you are dealing with your problem by acting like a child. So that might be something where, like, you're a full-fledged adult and you throw a huge temper tantrum, you cry and scream because you're not getting your way. We might also see behaviors like somebody sucking their thumb or wetting the bed. In fact, if you've ever seen the old school Disney version of Robin Hood, where it's the animated version where Robin Hood is like a fox or something like that, and they have King John, who's a lion, and every time he's upset, he starts sucking his thumb. That's actually a perfect example of regression, because something is making you upset, something is giving you anxiety, and you're attempting to reduce it by going back to this previous psychosexual stage. The next defense mechanism is one that you've probably heard of before, and that is denial. And denial is when, of course, something unpleasant or anxiety invoking has occurred, and you just refuse to admit it. You refuse to admit that something unpleasant has happened, that you pretend it doesn't exist, you pretend otherwise, that you are in denial that this has happened. Now, reaction formation is one that it's going to get a little bit more complicated here. So in a reaction formation, you are upset about something, right? We're going to reduce the anxiety, but you're reducing the anxiety by making something that would be unacceptable look like its opposite. So you're doing the opposite kind of behavior of what you would truly want to do. So this is a situation where, let's say, for example, you can't stand somebody. Somebody makes you really, really, really upset. And the way you deal with it is by putting a big old smile on your face and being super duper nice and polite to that person. That you're reducing your anxiety by doing the opposite of what you would actually want to do, which is probably like punch them in the face or something like that. So in reaction formation, you are doing the opposite behavior of what it is that you really want to do. Now I'm going to skip projection and come back to it, because that and displacement, which I can't see very well from my bar, is something that they often get confused with one another. And talking about rationalization. So rationalization is where you've done something wrong, okay? But now the way that you're going to deal with it is by self-explaining it in a way that it's hiding the behavior's actual reason. So, when we rationalize, it's like giving our own kind of truth to something. We are self-explaining something in a way that, it makes it not really my fault anymore, or it makes it something that's more acceptable by the way that, I've explained this kind of behavior. And so I am then rationalizing. And so, like I said, projection and displacement often get confused with one another. And I want to be sure that we know about projection, because this is the one that, often gets the most confused because we use the word incorrectly a lot. When you do projection, okay, you have anxiety because you screwed up, you did something wrong. But your way of dealing with it is by attributing that threatening impulse by making the person who is at fault the other person. Okay, you are the one who's wrong. You are the one who screwed up in all this, and you feel bad about it, kind of. But your way of dealing with it is by projecting it onto another person and making it their fault. Okay, that is projection. You have made it somebody else's fault. You see a lot of this in examples of like cheating, for example, that one partner is suspected of cheating because they are in fact cheating in the relationship. But when they're confronted about it, they try to turn it around and make it seem like the other partner is actually the one who has something to be secretive of. Maybe they're the one who are cheating, when in fact, you are, like, you're the one who's really at fault. That is what projection is. Now, displacement, on the other hand, this is when your anxiety is reduced by diverting your aggressive feelings towards something or someone that you believe is acceptable. Okay, so if, for example, as a teacher, I have a really bad day at work, and my boss comes in, he yells at me, he gives me a really hard time about something. I'm really upset at him, but it's unacceptable for me to take out my anger on him. So instead, I come home and, my husband innocently asks me something like, "What's for dinner?" And I totally bite his head off. I give him this really hard time. I am displacing, okay, that my anger is not at him. My anger is at another person, but I've taken it out on what I have decided is a more acceptable object. So instead of punching your sibling, you punch a pillow or something like that. That is the idea of displacement. There is one more defense mechanism that's not actually on my chart here, and that is called sublimation. Sublimation is like the one really positive defense mechanism. It's where you reduce your anxiety by doing something really good for yourself or like really good for society. Not really sure why it's not on my chart, but those are our different defense mechanisms, and these are things that we all do all the time. So until next time, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.